Obviously now we're in a completely different place. People are brands, investors, owners. I mean, everybody is coming to the table and understanding that women's sports is good business. It's such a fun and exciting time, and I am glad I've stuck with it all these years to get to be part of what's now very exciting.
Welcome back to Clark Hoop Knucks's WNBA fans. We have a major story developing. Caitlin Clark's treatment in the league has now drawn attention from lawmakers with calls for accountability and the possibility of a federal investigation being raised. But what exactly happened? What is Caitlin Clark's camp saying? And why is WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert facing so much pressure? Let's jump straight into today's video and break it all down. The WNBA is experiencing a huge development that has nothing to do with final scores or highlight clips. What began as a few hard fouls against Caitlin Clark has turned into something far more serious than anyone could have predicted. Fans may never fully understand what's going on behind the scenes because of the intense pressure in the boardroom, government-level scrutiny, and rumors of federal involvement. Consider it. How often do you hear about the Department of Justice taking a close look at a professional sports league? Very rarely. However, Clark's treatment on the court is now making its way into discussions involving federal investigators, legislators, and lawyers with ties to Washington. Here's the startling turn of events. According to claims circulating online, every shove, blindside hit, and hard foul was monitored, recorded, and scrutinized, turning what appeared to be ordinary basketball incidents into something that increasingly resembles a legal chess game. The WNBA believed this was simply about sports, but Caitlin Clark's team has reportedly turned it into a much larger conflict that the league may no longer be able to manage. This is no longer just a rookie story. It is a story about money, power, and how the biggest star in women's basketball has pushed the league into an unexpected confrontation. At first glance, everything appears straightforward. Caitlin Clark was the most anticipated rookie in WNBA history. With sold-out venues, record-breaking ratings, and unprecedented interest in women's basketball, she was positioned as the athlete who could help bring the WNBA further into the mainstream. But along with that attention came controversy. From the beginning, Clark faced intense physical play and several highly publicized incidents. Fans widely circulated clips involving Kennedy Carter, Chennedy Carter, Janie Carter, Tejonai Carrington, and other players, sparking heated debates about whether Clark was being treated fairly on the court. Some moments were criticized as unnecessary or overly physical, while others were defended as part of the normal intensity of professional basketball. What remains clear is that those incidents generated enormous public attention and intensified the debate surrounding Clark's treatment in the league. These were not standalone plays. The videos became part of a larger narrative, spreading rapidly across social media and fueling intense debate. The initial response was predictable. Welcome to the W. She needs to toughen up. Analysts and commentators often dismiss the incidents as part of the physical nature of professional basketball or the normal adjustment period for a rookie, while league officials largely stayed out of the conversation. There were no major public declarations, and fans continued debating whether the league should have responded more firmly. Fans, however, weren't satisfied with that explanation. They circulated compilations, hashtags calling for greater player safety, and slow-motion footage of physical plays involving Clark. What some viewed as normal competitive defense, others saw as evidence of a troubling pattern. Clark's supporters believed the repeated incidents deserved closer scrutiny rather than being dismissed as ordinary rookie treatment. According to Clark's supporters, the issue went beyond individual plays. They believed there was a broader culture surrounding the physical treatment she received and argued that repeated hard contact could disrupt her rhythm and affect how aggressively she played. But whether those incidents represented intentional targeting or simply the physical nature of professional basketball remains a matter of debate. What was undeniable was the message being discussed across the basketball world. Caitlin Clark was being tested every time she stepped onto the court. You have to pay a fee to enter this league and take control. This is where things get risky, though. The secrecy surrounding those admissions was short-lived. One of the strongest networks in all of sports, Clark's representation was secretly keeping score. Like evidence in a case file, every shove, elbow, and comment from an opponent or teammate was recorded, time-stamped, and categorized. They weren't just upset that Clark had been roughed up on the court. Instead, they were allegedly building a case to move the discussion from basketball into the legal and political spheres. Take a moment to consider that her team may have been preparing to portray her treatment as workplace harassment rather than simply sporting drama. While fans argued over whether she just needed to toughen up, using the term harassment changes the conversation entirely. Because harassment can raise questions involving workplace protections and civil rights rather than just basketball rules. Clark's camp understood that a player with her level of prominence would inevitably face intense physical play, criticism, and scrutiny. They therefore documented the incident, monitored the situation, and waited for the right opportunity to address the broader concerns. To everyone else, the escalation may have seemed sudden, but according to this narrative, Clark's team had been preparing behind the scenes, positioning themselves to put the WNBA under increasing pressure while the league appeared to be caught off guard. The moment Washington was drawn into the storm marked a turning point. What appeared to the general public to be just another sports controversy suddenly gained federal attention, and it began with a single letter. WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert received an official notification from Senator Jim Banks. While many dismissed it as political posturing, supporters of Clark argued that it was anything but random. They viewed the letter as a deliberate step designed to create a formal record and potentially encourage further government scrutiny. Here's why that matters. Federal agencies such as the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission and the Department of Justice do not necessarily need a press conference to begin reviewing allegations. Preliminary inquiries can involve correspondence, requests for information, internal discussions, and other steps that may remain private until they become public. At this stage, however, claims about a federal investigation should be treated as allegations, unless officially confirmed. This is no longer simply a conversation about hard fouls or missed calls. If allegations of workplace discrimination or harassment were ever substantiated, federal employment laws could become relevant depending on the specific circumstances. Federal scrutiny could also bring significant legal, financial, and reputational consequences for a sports league. And from a business perspective, Caitlin Clark is clearly one of the WNBA's most valuable and marketable stars, making the controversy surrounding her treatment especially significant. Product sales have reportedly increased by more than 600% since her debut, while League Pass subscriptions have also seen significant growth. Television ratings for games featuring Clark have frequently outperformed games without her, and ticket demand can rise sharply when she is scheduled to appear. That kind of growth matters because it shows just how commercially important Clark has become to the WNBA. But there is an important distinction between financial dependence and proven causation. If Clark were to suffer a serious injury, the league could potentially face lower viewership, reduced ticket demand, and difficult questions from sponsors and broadcasters. That is why the conversation surrounding player safety has become so significant. From a business perspective, protecting the league's biggest stars is simply good economics. But the story also touches on a much broader cultural debate. Caitlin Clark is a white heterosexual woman entering a league with a different demographic and cultural makeup, including a large Black and LGBTQ+ player community. Those differences should not determine how anyone is treated on the basketball court, but they have become part of the public conversation surrounding Clark's rise. Former WNBA player Candace Wiggins previously made controversial claims about feeling excluded within the league, which she attributed in part to her sexuality. Those claims were disputed and remain a subject of debate. The All-Star voting controversy also fueled discussion. Clark received more than 1 million fan votes, demonstrating enormous popularity, while player voting placed her considerably lower among guards. Some interpreted that difference as evidence of resentment, while others argued that players were simply evaluating candidates differently from fans. Either way, the gap became another flashpoint in the ongoing debate surrounding Clark's place in the WNBA. Dick Vitale and other analysts were quick to interpret the situation as a form of envy. Furthermore, jealousy in sports is not always harmless. It can contribute to tensions, selective criticism, physical play, and strained relationships. However, claims that referees or league officials intentionally allowed Clark to receive more physical treatment would require credible evidence before they could be presented as fact. According to Clark supporters, the issue should not simply be framed as intense competition. They argue that if a player were treated differently because of protected characteristics or workplace status, it could raise much more serious questions under employment and civil rights law. That is why the controversy has expanded beyond basketball and become part of a much larger cultural debate. What could ultimately create the greatest concern for the WNBA is not the headlines or viral hashtags, but the possibility of formal legal discovery if an actual lawsuit or government proceeding were to move forward. Discovery can require relevant emails, messages, documents, and other communications to be produced, depending on the scope of the case and applicable legal rules. Imagine investigators finding internal communications showing that officials knowingly ignored legitimate safety concerns or dismissed complaints. That could transform a sports controversy into a much larger institutional issue involving management decisions, accountability, and potential negligence. But at this point, claims about hidden communications, secret investigations, or league attorneys preparing for discovery remain allegations unless supported by verified evidence. What is undeniable is that the controversy has become too large to ignore, and any future legal action could bring far greater scrutiny to the WNBA than a few viral clips ever could. The NBA, as the WNBA's parent league, could potentially face scrutiny depending on the nature and scope of any future legal proceedings. Sponsors and broadcast partners could also face difficult questions if a credible investigation were ever to establish serious misconduct or institutional failures. But it is important to separate those possibilities from confirmed facts. There is currently no established evidence that a lawsuit, federal investigation, or discovery process will expose hidden communications throughout the league. What is undeniable is the enormous media attention surrounding Caitlin Clark. She is no longer simply a basketball player. she has become one of the most recognizable figures in women's sports. Every hard foul, controversial moment, and league response can spread across TikTok, YouTube, podcasts, and other social platforms within hours. Slow motion clips go viral, commentators debate the incidents, and fans demand explanations. That creates a challenge for the WNBA, because the league no longer has complete control over the conversation. A short viral video can reach millions of people before an official statement is even released. Clark's popularity has also turned her into a cultural symbol far beyond basketball, with celebrities, musicians, comedians, and influencers joining the conversation, and the timing makes the situation even more significant. Clark's arrival coincided with record-breaking attention toward women's basketball, meaning every controversy involving her receives an enormous audience. Whether the physical play she has faced represents ordinary professional competition or something more serious remains a matter of debate. But the larger issue is impossible to ignore. The WNBA is trying to build its biggest era of growth while simultaneously dealing with intense scrutiny over how its most marketable star is treated on the court. If the league fails to address legitimate concerns about player safety and consistency, the public debate could become far more damaging than any single game or viral clip.